Welcome back. We're moving into the second unit in our reading book, and this lesson and the ones after this will be working with literary text. Literary text is going to be fiction material. It is not true. It's story based. You can have poems, stories, songs, lots of different forms, but it is not going to be that informational type text that we've been using, or technical manuals, or science and history. This is more of storytelling, you could think of it. Some of the skills are going to be the same as the skills that we studied in part 1 of the book. So you won't be learning new skills. We will just be applying those to different types of passages. So the first one in chapter 14 is about determining word meaning. This is on page 48 of your textbook. And before I get to the text, I actually want to review this little foldable piece that we made in chapter 1. This little thing is giving you 6 strategies to understand words that you may not recognize. And I just want to briefly review those. They're not new. These are things we've already worked with, but it's been a while. So let's just quickly review the 6 strategies. If you open this first door, the inferences door, you will see this definition or this example. Good athletes are always introspective. They never stop studying themselves to understand how they can get better. And we're supposed to figure out what introspective means. And I'm not going to go through this again because you can go back to that video in chapter 1 if you want to see that. But using inferences, we came up with the idea that introspective means that a person is able to look inside the self to understand and improve. So we talked a lot about inferences. Inference means to figure out. When you talk about inferring something, you are figuring out the meaning in this case. Then we talked about synonyms, words that mean the same or almost the same. For example, poisonous, noxious, and toxic are synonyms. Gas, fumes, and vapor are synonyms. And then we talked about the opposite of synonyms, which is an antonym. Antonyms are words that have opposite meanings, like hot and cold, tall and short, old and young. Those are antonyms. And then we talked about just good old definitions. Sometimes the passage will tell you the definition. Sometimes you have to use inferences to figure out your definition. But it's just figuring out what a word or a phrase means. In this case, the word was photosynthesis, and we had to come up with a definition of photosynthesis. And then we talked about word parts. This is my particular favorite, where you have a root word, a prefix, and a suffix, and you can figure out lots of words, especially in science. You can really find some good science words by using this concept. And then we had one more, and that was, and I cannot remember, an example, using an example of a word. In this case, the word was martinet, and the examples were Adolf Hitler, General George Patton, parents, and grandparents. Those were examples of a martinet personality. So we had that word that we didn't really understand, or I didn't really understand, and we figured out what that word meant by looking at examples of that word. This lesson also adds one more, and it's one that you've already seen before, but I am going to write it here just because it is noteworthy. You can sometimes figure out the meaning of an unknown word by looking for a detail. And remember, we talked a lot about main ideas and details. It's that same concept. This is talking about a description that allows or shows, let's say that shows a word meaning. So sometimes an author will give you the definition of an unfamiliar word by describing it using lots of details. Details are who, what, when, where, why, and how. So if you were to have a writing assignment to describe your favorite flower, you would pick a topic. For me, it would be a rose. And I would give the details to really define that word, rose. Now, that's not a good definition because all of us know what a rose is. If you're an adult, you have a concept of what rose means. But if you had a flower, maybe the word was hydrangea, which happens to be another of my favorite flowers, that may be a little more unfamiliar to you. If there were a science term, if you got the species name of the plant, that would be very unfamiliar to most people, and that would be a good one to do a description, a detailed description. One thing springs to mind this week. I unfortunately witnessed a very bad car accident, and I was waiting for the officer to come and take my statement, and I was going over in my own mind exactly what I saw and in what order I saw it. And I was thinking about these details because that's the best way I knew to give a very clear, objective, factual description of what I had seen. My opinion didn't matter. It was what I actually saw that mattered. So details can be very, very helpful to you. Okay, with that review behind us, I'm going to stop this video and we will practice these skills again with literary text.